So Kevin, you are now the new face of mental health in the NBA. How does that feel?
At first, it was a little scary. I think from suffering with anxiety and depression for a long time into having my first panic attack on November 5th and not really knowing what that meant to fast forwarding being here now. It's definitely, at first it was frightening, but seeing the change in somewhat of the stigma and also being able to affect and help the community that has come forward and not only talk to me, but you see people from every different walk of life and seeing that it doesn't discriminate. It's been, very, it's made me, very happy in that aspect, and it's changed my frame of mind. And I really do believe in writing my piece that everybody is going through something. So that whole community and being vulnerable and knowing that it doesn't discriminate and knowing that I'm trying to change the stigma, not only for people in sports, but all over. And especially I mentioned in young boys in my article as well. I think that's something that is very prevalent and very of the times that we need to beat that stigma down.
Well, Dr. Parham, of course, calls this a human condition,
Right.
not a basketball condition. You said something to me that I was a little surprised at. You said, "I don't pass the mirror test." What do you mean by that?
I just meant that, only by admitting who we are do we get what we want. And what I mean by that is I used to, and sometimes I still do, like I'm a victim of my own mind sometimes, is when I look in the mirror, I wasn't living my true life. I wasn't being myself. And I think, I really believe that in being vulnerable and I felt like, the people that are more apt to share, how they're suffering and not suffering in silence, they're more likely to help people come forward and pay it forward to the next person. So I think that was what I realized in looking in the mirror, that I have a chance to help. It could be one person. But in doing so, I think not only myself, but DeMar coming out and having his comments about depression enabled me to come out and say that I've been suffering with anxiety and depression. So passing the mirror test is still something I look in the mirror every day and say, how can I be better? But I felt, when I did, come out and say, this is what I'm dealing with, that I could look in the mirror that day and be happy with myself.
So you told me this is something that's deep-seated. I think in my research,
Right.
most of the time it is. It goes all the way back to the very, very beginning. So
Yep.
let's go back to the beginning with you.
Well, so I know we've had many conversations, but one thing that sticks out in my mind, I know that we've talked about it, is my brother. After not speaking to him for a while and having seen him after the article came out, we were in Portland, and I just seen my sister here in Los Angeles, and he had brought it up. He had mentioned it. I didn't know if he wanted to talk about it, what that conversation was going to be like, but he had mentioned, I remember when you were young, and it would either be rage fits or it would be, we'd lose you for a couple or a few weeks, and so I'd just leave you alone. I didn't know how to handle that with you, and I think that was something that is going to stick with me and be ingrained in my mind for a long time, because one of the things that I said in my article too is that I'm trying to be better to the people in my life, and my brother is one of them. So hearing that come from my own blood, that was a moment that was special to me, and it was pretty apparent that I wish I would have had the presence of mind earlier on to face these things. But
Sure.
I think everybody has their moment, their aha moment, or that moment where they're able to come forward with these type of things.
So your brother tells you, so you were gone for a couple of weeks. When you hear that, is it surprising to you? Do you say, "Oh, I remember feeling that"? You have no idea what he's talking about?
Well,
or?
I think sometimes when you're in it, you don't even realize how you're affecting other people. And I think this year in particular for me was an eye-opening experience, as opposed to when I was young. You have that feeling of being invincible in some cases,
Sure.
but you also feel like, oh, there's people out there, that are going through far worse things than I am. And while that might be true, as I told you, with a number of people that I look up to, whether it be Anthony Bourdain, having a life where, seemingly he has the best job in the world. He has great success, a beautiful girlfriend, a beautiful child. Robin Williams, I just watched his documentary, and he would exert himself and put himself basically in the ground and physically exert himself to a point where he took his mind completely off of it. To Kate Spade, she was talking about, it was going to hurt my brand. So for me, as a youngster, I didn't really see it like that. I just thought, I'll get over it, I'll get out of it, and I didn't know that I was affecting people the way that I was. Fast forward to now, it's very similar. Like, it doesn't have a demographic. It just is and is.
Sure. But so this 2 weeks, I'm trying to wrap my head around the idea of a little boy being gone for 2 weeks. What does that mean? You're in your room, you're not talking?
Basically. I mean, I was in my room. I would be pretty dark. That's the word I like to use. And basketball was always my safe place, and still is. And I mentioned that physical exertion and taking your mind out of the equation, having your mind occupied or preoccupied. It's those moments when you're left alone that can be scary, or things can be misleading, or your mind can play tricks on you.
So let's talk about the panic attack for a minute, because that's when the world got a little glimpse of what was going on. And as you know, people were talking about this long before you came out yourself and talked about it. So take us through what happened that night.
Well, it was very scary for me, because I have always had the anxiety, and I think a lot of it, like a lot of people, when, either it's like, for example, you want to go to bed or you want to go to sleep, and you think, I have a big game the next day. And so what happens? You plan your routine, you try to go to sleep, you get ready, and then you dig up the worst things that have happened the last 10 years for you. So I think it was a combination of things that were going on in my life that led up to that point, as well as a really slow and poor start for a team that, as you know, was expected to make it to the finals and potentially win a championship, especially with the roster that we had. So I think it was a 5-7 start, and on November 5th, I just remember not quite feeling right until halftime, or I should say we got to halftime, didn't feel right that entire half. And I remember we went through a few plays, there was a timeout, I got to the huddle, and that's when I felt something that I had never felt before. I couldn't catch my breath. I felt like my mind was completely out, and I couldn't send oxygen to my brain. So Ty Lue had come and said something to me after a timeout where, we had called the timeout, so the timeout was our doing, and the game wasn't going right for us. Ty Lue had said something to me. I told him I'll be right back. I ran in the locker room. I was essentially searching for something that I couldn't find. I didn't know this feeling, and then I just basically ran to our trainer's room, fell on the ground, collapsed, and my heart was jumping out of my stomach or my chest, and I couldn't get air to my lungs, and essentially was trying to clear my throat, sticking my hand down my throat, trying to get myself
Seriously?
air. Yeah, so it was.
You must have been terrified.
It was terrifying. I thought I was having a heart attack. I was extremely scared that I really felt like I was going to die in this moment. I'm getting hot thinking about it. But it was a moment that nobody wants to have, but it was very eye-opening. And then going to the hospital after that, everything checked out, and I was basically thinking to myself, well, what happened? What the hell just happened?
Right. So you run off the court, and
Nobody knows what's going on.
Ty doesn't know either.
No.
So you don't have time to think about them because you think you can't breathe.
Yeah. Well, my mind was going 1,000 different places.
Right,
But
sure.
all I was thinking was, I have to catch my breath. And
Number one important thing.
Yeah. Like, I need to catch my breath, and not only to go out there, but this felt like life or death.
Wow. So the game ends. So you're lying there in the training room. Does the trainer come in?
He comes in, and he's basically, Steve Spiro, he's yelling at me. He goes, he's seeing what's happening, and he's just trying to calm me down. And in a situation like that, he's asking me what I need. What do I need to get air, or what do I need to get out of this moment. How can I help you? So in that respect, I feel like our training staff did a great job.
Yeah, they don't know
What can they do? Right.
They
It's
don't know
hard.
what to do. So no one sees you after the game, right?
No one sees me after the game. Nobody knows what happened besides the very few people that were there. I get a couple texts from a teammate or two, and then.
And are they saying, "What's up"? Is that what they're saying? Hey, are you okay?
Is everything okay? And that was, just their way of checking in because they didn't know. And where I went, it was, thankfully, it wasn't in front of the masses.
That is lucky.
Yeah.
That is lucky. So as you know, the response to that, and then there was another incident later in Oklahoma City, which I believe you said had nothing to do with the panic attack.
No, it didn't.
Right?
It was like my flu game. I was sick that game.
Right. So now your teammates, some of them are concerned, some of them are mad.
Yeah.
How do you contend with all of that?
It was tough because when we had our meeting and, I think the brunt of it was not only taken out on me, there was a lot of layers. We weren't doing well. But one of them was me, and it was a topic of conversation. And, I kind of had looked at a few people that knew and just said, I can't tell you guys what's going on. So I said, listen, I know you guys are upset. I hear you. But there's certain things that I'm going through that I'm working on to be able to help you guys and help myself. So just know that. Respect my space to a point, and I will have an open dialogue and try to be transparent with you guys. But I didn't feel like this was something that I should share to them at that point. And I felt like, it wasn't their call to do it as well. But I think when tensions got a little bit high, Ty Lue had said, "Oh, you mean the panic attack that Kevin had?" And so I thought, okay, something's going to need to happen here where I'm going to have to come out and, kind of speak to what I've been going through as well as that panic attack.
I'm just going to take a wild guess that during this time, Channing Frye is talking to you pretty regularly.
He is. So Channing is a very close, one of my best friends. We had, because he had similar issues and,
Right.
and things that, he had been pretty dark through his entire life, but really in the past 12 months before that. And it was, having both of his parents pass within a 1 month period. So we were able to talk at length over a bunch of glasses of wine, but at length about some of the struggles that he had went through and what I had went through as well.
Was that helpful? Just,
It was
hey,
so
someone else
helpful.
knows what I'm feeling?
It was so helpful. I mean, as you know, down the line, and it's everybody knows it, that, I've seen a therapist and I've been seeing a therapist now, but having him as just even from outside of a professional room or standpoint, having him to talk to, especially somebody that's there day to day, I don't know if I would have made it if it weren't for him. So I not only tip my hat to him, but I wrapped my arm around him, thinking that was something that was very special for me to help get through that.
So now I'm going to ask you what everyone wants to know. What's LeBron doing during this time?
LeBron is, I think after the fact, he was very understanding, just because he had no idea what was going on. And I can't say that as a teammate, I wouldn't have done the same thing and been pissed and said, you got to come to work every single day. Because that was Bron's biggest thing with me. He just said, if you play as hard as you can, we're going to get the best out of you, especially you. So I think, leaving a game at the first time out after halftime, and then, having a game where Oklahoma City, I just wasn't feeling right. There was moments like that where, I think it can be hard because there's so much weight on his shoulders. So, but I think having gone through that and now that he knows and there is transparency, I think there was a newfound level of respect on that end.
He certainly was very vocal on social media about that. I just didn't know privately, does he have private conversations with you as well as these posts that we all see?
Well, I remember the first thing he said to me after that came out was that, he shook my hand on the back of the bus. He, kind of let everybody get off, and he said, you really helped a lot of people today. You helped a lot, not only a lot of kids, but you helped a lot of people. So that was a special moment, but, I couldn't go a few minutes without another person in that community I talk about coming forward and saying, hey, this is my experience, and I want to share this with you. So it was a way of seeing a lot of people are being vulnerable, and also, sharing these experiences and having that community and saying we need to beat down this stigma together.
So I talked to Adam Silver the other day, and I said, what was it like when he spoke to you? And he said, I wasn't going to ask him to do anything because that wasn't my place.
Right.
He was stunned at how open you are to doing anything they want. So when you're sitting there with the commissioner of the NBA, by this point, are you just free? I'm an open book? Is that what?
Pretty much. I've now come to a point where I just kind of lay all my cards out on the table and say, this is what you get. And having that freedom of mind is something that I've never really had. It's actually given me peace. And sometimes things get worse in order to get better. Sometimes there is a rock bottom, but it's only really been up from here, and there's only different things or things that I've read or places that I've gone to look for help or find that peace in mind, body, and soul, where I know that people reaching out for help or talking to someone, it does really work. And for so long I put that off, thinking I didn't need it, because that was my playbook when I was young, is to suppress it and be a man. And I think the masculinity thing is kind of misleading in a lot of ways, because when that's ingrained in your mind in an early age, you feel that way throughout.
So you mentioned that you watched the Robin Williams documentary, and you mentioned before to me about both Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain, and I'm wondering is it sort of a mild obsession now to look at people who have had mental health issues and learn something? I mean, those people aren't here anymore.
Everything's different, or every person is different in what they go through, and I just always say that everybody's going through something, and those are three separate cases of famous people. And I know I spoke to you on the phone, and Bryan Cranston, one of my favorite actors, said that after Anthony Bourdain passed and Kate Spade had passed and taken their lives, that success is not immune to depression. So I think it's finding that empathy, no matter who you are and how much money you make, or your socioeconomic status, or your gender, or your sexual preference. No matter what it is, people are going through something. Because this is in a social climate that we're in now, it's really tough not to. So you have to find that empathy and know that every man is my superior and that I can learn from him.
So before Anthony Bourdain took his life, you were examining his. Tell everybody about that.
So I had a show idea for the Players Stream in the same company that I work with, and same place where I came out and wrote my article. And I was working on a potential show idea that I think everybody goes in and says, I want to do the Parts Unknown, the Anthony Bourdain version of this show. So I had taken a liking to him way before that. I felt like I traveled the world with him. And, I loved how he narrated the show and, what he was about, and he had that edginess to him. So I started watching the first, I watched the first 4.5 seasons and then kind of put it aside when the season started. And I wrote down several notes about each and every show where, there was pinpoints. I pinpointed some things, highlighted some things that, I potentially wanted to put into the show that I wanted to co-create or move forward with. And I remember Game 4 of the NBA Finals, it was the first thing I saw when I looked at my phone. It said Anthony Bourdain, suicide, where he was, who found him, time of day. And it just crushed me. I was thinking to myself, how am I going to go out there and play? This is one of my heroes. I had it in a note in my phone. He was one of 5 people that I wanted to shadow him on his show. And I wanted to go and see Parts Unknown, how it was filmed. And he was one of the guys I even just wanted to have a conversation with, because he was one of my heroes. And the day before I packed up for Cleveland, the morning I was leaving, I remember the last thing that I grabbed. I'm very visual. I write everything down. So I was looking in my planner and going through stuff, and a couple yellow legal pad papers had fallen out, and it just said Anthony B at the top, and it was all my notes from the show. And that just broke my heart. I still watch his show, post it on my social, post quotes from him, and just try to have his legacy live on, because to me he was very special, and he was going through things that I know people saw because of his past, but you just don't know where somebody's at in relation to how they're feeling or if they're reaching the end.
You told me that your girlfriend Kate was one of the people that finally said to you,
Yeah.
"I'm worried about you. You need to do something." When did that happen? Was it after the panic attack? Before that?
Well, I think it was definitely before that, because we had been together a while, and I think it was a lot of the very close people around me too that had said to me, "Hey, we need to take care of this. You need to, you take care of your physical so well. You train, you eat well, you chase the game as much as you can, and keep the main thing. But right now, the main thing should be your mind, because that darkness that you had as a young kid and have had throughout your career is starting to surface more than we've seen." So I think that was not only something that Kate had said, but a number of people, a very few close people had said to me.
So you had always said that basketball was your sanctuary, but eventually, if you don't take care of these things, it spills over into your entire life.
Yeah, I think you saw that. But I know that after my panic attack, that I was playing. I mean, I had an all-star season and I was playing well, but there was that time, I think really Christmas on until all-star break. That was I had broken my hand shortly before, but there was a time where it was just bad basketball. And if my sanctuary and my happy place, if everything's going wrong, on top of what's going on off the court, those quiet moments alone are scary. And I also believe that breaking my hand, not being able to play in the All-Star game, not being able to help the team was tough too, because then the game was taken away from me. I couldn't even go out there. Forget playing bad, I couldn't even play. So I think that was very tough as well.
So we sat behind the curtain at All-Star.
Yeah.
We got really, really close, and then something made you stop from just, what made you stop?
Well, as you know, I was very, very open with you about just about everything. But I think you could see my eyes started to divert when we got really close. And I just wasn't ready at the time. But we mentioned All-Star break. It's funny because this is a couple weeks or a few weeks after we had that team meeting, and Ty had kind of got the balls rolling on, wow, other people know. I don't want this to be news where somebody else is breaking it. And when I get to, and this is post-DeMar, all of that. And so when I got to All-Star, I turn on the TV, and as I mentioned to you, the first thing that I see is Parkland, Florida. And I'm thinking, this kid is, 18, 19 years old? This is a young man. Think about what he was going through to get him to this point. This kid was not right between the ears. So I saw that. I had sat down with you. We had mentioned, we had talked about a lot of intimate details and knew that there was, some rumblings about what was going on around All-Star. So, I thought to myself, I want to share the story on my own terms. And and I guess thankfully I was out at the time, so I was able to focus on that. And it was not easy going through all that and reliving a lot of moments. Not only from my childhood to help me get in the right frame of mind to write this piece, but being vulnerable and trying to help younger men. I remember talking to my agent, and he said, "Are you sure you want to do this? Because a lot of people are going to talk about it." I said, Jeff Sports Magazine. I said, "I don't know if anybody will, but just understand, I'm trying to help people." He goes, "I get it. If you help one person, if you help one kid, it could be absolutely life-changing and groundbreaking for that kid." So that's what I was looking for, and I'm thankful it had such a profound impact on this community as a whole.
It
was a
really
big
has.
deal. It was a big deal, and I'd never thought that would happen. I just did it because it was freeing for me, but I knew that I would help that one person.
So how irritating was it? I was irritated by it. That at All-Star cocktail parties, your personal mental health was a very popular topic.
It was, and that was, it's interesting when you have a injury so to speak, and you have a knee injury or my hand or it's an ankle sprain. It's a lot different when you can't see it and somebody doesn't know what's going on outside the lines, or especially either a teammate or a former colleague or somebody that you work with on a day-to-day basis, has no idea your background, or quite frankly doesn't care to, or doesn't give you a chance. That to me is what was tough about people talking at All-Star, because I really believe, I always said, give me a chance. I really believe that if you ever just took the time to have a conversation with me, or somebody that is going through something or not, that's how you should make up your mind, or that's how you should judge someone is by their character and not by, in some ways, their reputation. I mean, the late John Wooden say, be concerned more with your character than your reputation, because your character is who you really are, and your reputation is merely what others think you are.
Correct. So when you did come out, there are players that are coming forward for the series we're doing, and they all mention you and DeMar. It has had a great effect. But I think what you said about one kid, isn't that really where mental wellness has to start, is when you're younger?
For sure. And that was a thing that I mentioned early on, was young boys and young men are probably furthest behind, because you see all these LGBT, women's movement, civil rights, you see all these movements happening, whether it be from the 1950s, 60s, all the way till now. There's been so many years of putting time into that, to where I think young men really, that playbook that I talk about of just suppressing it and kind of living in that darkness and not sharing it, is something that is old and it's outdated. And beating down that stigma is something that I think we can do as a community, and as athletes we have the platform and we're able to do that. I mean, there's having LeBron retweet it and have great words about he's the best athlete in the world, or having other players come forward, whether it be DeMar or Kelly Oubre, or everybody that's gonna come forward here. It's a special time to be able to help people. I mentioned that social climate where everything's so curated now. Being able to be raw and just be yourself, that's what I talk about in passing the mirror test. Is that, like, I live my day today as I should, and that's what makes me happy. I mean, it's not every day that it happens, because I think it's a ever evolving and it's a process always. You have to work at it like anything else, but it's the willingness and knowing that doing the work is going to help you. That's what makes it special.
So stigma is still the problem. There's
Stigma.
still plenty of guys that have issues, and they don't need to come forward to me or to you, but
Right.
they do need to get the help.
Agree.
So there's still plenty, there's probably some of your teammates, I don't know. I think some of the teammates that felt differently are gone now.
Yes.
But there are players out there that think you're soft because you did this. They think DeMar's soft. They're going to think everybody that comes forward is soft. What do you say to them?
I mean, you think DeMar DeRozan's soft? I mean,
I
it's
don't.
like, I know, and there's people that are going to say that regardless. Anytime you miss time, like I broke my hand and people say you're soft. Like, it's such a tired statement. Like, I've put my time in this league. Guys put their time in this league. To be in the NBA, you're not soft. And to come forward with this, it's, like I said, that's tired, it's outdated, and it actually, in the end, is probably, for me, it was the best thing I did, and it's only going to help you moving forward. It's going to make you a more evolved human being, and it doesn't just mean basketball players or anywhere in sports. This is an everyone and every human thing.
So I think the Cleveland Cavaliers are interesting because Ty Lue, as you know, had to take, he had some mental health issues that he sort of talked about, but not completely, and again, nor should he have to.
Right.
But what about the support from your team? They just signed you to an extension, so they're clearly not that concerned about this, right?
No, and that was something that, I mean, we mentioned Kate Spade even earlier too. She had said that I felt like this would hurt my brand, and I thought to myself, wow, that's wild. And we had talked about that at length as well, is that guys didn't want to come forward. This is also, guys didn't want to come forward because they were on a contract year, or they have to be able to support their family, so they can't come out and say this because who's going to take a chance on them? But I think it's so mentally freeing and positive to be able to do this, and in mentioning the Cavaliers, Kobe Altman, Ty Lue, and a number of others throughout the organization had either written me a letter or, taken me to the side and said, thank you. But I think a lot of guys and everyone supported Ty in a big way because they could kind of see that there was something going on with his health and bothering him. And I think that only added to the community of coaches now that are going to come forward and say, listen, I'm dealing with this, and to get the best out of me, I'm going to need a little bit of help. And whether it's them coming out and say it or not, them getting this stuff done on the side is only going to help them. But the Cleveland Cavaliers organization has been great for me and great to me through this entire process. And that's exactly what it is, a process. And when I signed my deal, that was one of the topics of conversation through the Cleveland and national media. They had asked me afterwards, how has this been going through, and how has the team reacted to it? And I can say nothing but good things about Cleveland.
Are you a better basketball player now?
I think I'm more free just in myself and who I am. I said, like admitting who I am. This is a part of me, and it's not in some ways I wear it like a badge of honor because I say this is who you get and this is what you get. But I just think it's I feel more. I mentioned the word evolve. I just feel more at peace with myself because I can really live my truth and try to get help in that way.
So if you could have the NBA do one thing, then they've rolled out, sort of quietly rolled out a new policy. They had an internal memo that went to every team about what they expect them to do for mental health. But if you could say to them, this is really what you need to do, what would that be?
Have a number of things at arm's reach in order for players to get the best out of your players, not only for the team, but so that they can perform well, and whether they're suffering from depression or anxiety or something that's going on with their mental health, that they have that at all their disposal. And I think teams will be more forward-thinking with that, and I think Cleveland has done a great job of that as well.
So are we talking someone on call almost?
I think, yeah, somebody on the staff, and because I'm telling you, there's a number of guys on each team that are dealing with this. And I know it, and you know it, and a lot of people know it, but it's not talked about, which is fine if you're not going to come out and say it to the public, but it's something that maybe behind closed doors, or whether it's dealing with the family or dealing with the team or your friends or those closest to you, that you should have something in your place of work that you're able to reach out to and know that that's going to help. And I don't know what that is. One thing I said, and I've said all along, is that I don't have all the answers, but I'm looking to see other people's stories and find ways to share those as well. And it's a never-ending process.
So some of the people I talked to, a couple of them said that their mental health issues were so exacerbated by the stress of playing and being a professional, high expectations, all the pressures, that they did consider actually quitting. Did you ever consider quitting basketball because of this?
No, only because basketball was my safe place, and there was many times where I did let anxiety get the best of me. While I still might have had a good game, there might have been different moments that maybe could have kind of shifted the pendulum one way or the other throughout a game, that I guess my anxiety or something, my mind had been misleading. Maybe it was a free throw, maybe it was a shot, maybe it was the attention to detail on defense that may have swayed me a different way. But as far as quitting goes, no, basketball was my happy place.
That's great. So when you going forward now,
I should say is my happy place. So
well, I would
was,
hope so.
is,
You just signed a big extension.
Yeah.
But at least it would be a very good time to retire.
Yeah. Right.
But you've got a young team now. It's a completely different team, and you're going to be the face of the team.
Right.
So this seems like a pretty good time for this all to be happening.
It's funny you say that, because I don't think without having not gone through this, would I have been prepared to for this next chapter, next phase in my career? Because there was six years in Minnesota where, you know, I didn't really have a lot of veterans. We were a very young team. You know, there was a number of guys that, you know, were shipped in and out. We always had a lot of turnover, and, you know, we never made the playoffs. And I was the guy to where, you know, I came in, this has been 4 years now in Cleveland, and we were expected to win a championship every single year or get to the finals every single year. But I think in a lot of ways, especially, you know, learning from LeBron and learning from the situation, is that sometimes you have to learn to follow, and then, you know, in order to lead. So that was a huge thing for me. But having gone through this year, and, you know, kind of walking the walk, and you know, being who I truly am, that is going to help me on the floor. And I think this experience has only been positive in a lot of ways. Has each and every day been perfect? No, but each day is a chance to get better and learn and put my best foot forward in attacking this as well.
So we've talked before, LeBron is a tough guy to play with.
Yeah.
Very, very tough to play with, compounded by what you were contending with.
Right.
So how much did you talk to him about what he was going to do? It didn't seem like any of you did that much. Did you really have any idea what he was going to do before he did it?
I had somewhat of an idea. I had, you know, like everybody, weighed the options and kind of had an idea of where he might go, but I knew it was probably between Cleveland and Los Angeles. You know, I think he's always looking for a different challenge. He's always wondering what's next, and it feels like sometimes he's playing chess and everybody else is playing checkers. He's you know, very, very mentally strong, knows the game of basketball so well, and sometimes there's something that he sees that other people don't. So I think, you know, making it to 4 straight finals, you know, helping in the most, him helping the most in us winning a championship in 2016. I think, you know, he might have been looking for something different and a change and next chapter for him, and here we are.
So what happens now with Cleveland? I mean, it's expectations fall off a cliff. Everything changes, doesn't
Right.
it?
Well, I think now we have 2 nationally televised games, of course, unless we make the playoffs. So I think it's going to be the best thing we can do is overachieve. I know it's easy for a team to say, hey, we need to work hard, we need to play our hardest, but that's the only way that we're going to make it. And we have the cloth and the guys to make that happen and overachieve and excel at a high level. But there's going to be games we need to steal. There's going to be times when we need to grow up, and maybe our inexperience will show. But we have a number of veteran guys that have been tested, battle tested, and have played at a very high level in meaningful games.
Of all the people that came up to you after all this, was there one in particular that kind of took you by surprise at how supportive he or she might have been?
One instance in particular, after the article came out, we were on a road trip. Immediately after, it was a morning, we were traveling, I believe, to Denver. And I was making the trip, I think, even though I was hurt. And there was after the road trip, there was a note that was left in my locker, and it said, you know, Cleveland Cavaliers. Obviously, I won't mention the name, but it was a couple pages from somebody that, you know, had worked in the organization and had gone through some really, really tough times. And that was something that, you know, I went home, I read a couple times and had kept. And it really, I mean, kind of pulled at my heartstrings in one way, but also made me happy that he or she felt like they could open up to me and had somebody to talk to. And I had taken that person to the side shortly thereafter when you know, no one was around, and just said, hey, thank you, and, you know, I'm here if you ever need anything, ever want to talk. I think having that at your disposal, or having somebody that is there and can have empathy and in some cases commiserate with you is good to have.
So you mentioned the badge of honor. You kind of are this guy now, right? So when you go to USA Basketball, is Greg Popovich saying, good for you, Kevin? I mean, is that how your life goes these days?
Yeah, in a lot of ways. I mean, it's something that people are pretty upfront about and not only thank me for, but ask me, you know, what's next. And I think there's plenty more to come. For me, I feel like it's going to be life work. not only for me working on myself, but trying to help others and starting a foundation and making sure that it's all about the right things, and that's helping people.
And you're going to start with kids, schools?
I would hope so. That was, and it's tough not to think about where I grew up and also where I've played as well.
So if you could go back, which is hard to do, we all want to go back, don't we?
We all do, yeah.
But if you could go back, at what point of your life would you want to say, hey, I need some help? How old would you have been?
I would say probably when I was in middle school, because I think when I was even younger, I knew that there was, something where I couldn't get out of bed sometimes, or something where outside of basketball, I didn't quite feel right, or I would get so worked up that I would either act out or be pretty brash or mean to people, or just not want to be around anybody, not even my family. So I think it was probably when I was 13 or 14 years old where I thought, well, I could really use not only a counselor, but just somebody that would wrap their arm around me and say, you got this, like, we're going to get through this.
You weren't thinking that at 13, were you?
No, I
Not
thought
in a
I was
million years.
invincible. I thought, this will pass. Like, what do I have to worry about? There's so many people, going through things. Why do I have to worry about, my mental health? At the time, I didn't even know these things. I didn't know that there was a stigma. I didn't know that, there was things like this going on. I felt suppress it, suffer in silence, be a man, because I was always just the top dog and, the outlier basketball player.
You were the best player everywhere you went, right?
Pretty much.
So you say you have history in your family. Almost everyone that I've interviewed has a family history of depression.
Mm-hmm.
It gets carried down from generation to generation.
Mm-hmm.
How do we contend with that?
In a lot of ways, I feel like while it is in others' families and mine as well, it's tough not to think that, fast forward to now, and then if you backtrack, that in some of these cases it's generational. I mean, there's so many movements and stigmas being beaten down. Listen, the world is in our country is pretty divided, but there are some silver linings and also bright spots where people helping and people coming forward, not only like myself, but a lot of the guys that'll come forward in this story and elsewhere. That's where we need to be. My father's and my grandfather's generation, they were really taught to suppress it, and I think in like PTSD type situations, going to war, whether be Vietnam, for instance, or World War II, they come back and they say, we just don't talk about it. We never bring up the war. We never bring up what we went through. And I think while that is okay, there's some things that you should look to work on, even if you are suppressing it in order to live your life. I had mentioned earlier that everything now on social is so curated, and these. I really believe that it transcends any age. But when you're young and you're looking at people that you think you have to be this, and you have to be perfect, and everything is broken down in such a way that your mind is conditioned to think, I have to be that. It's hurtful and harmful. I mean, even at 29, I have towed the line and had one foot in the water thinking, I don't really want to share who I am or be myself, because what will people think? And that itself gives me anxiety. So I understand what young kids are going through and how they've been conditioned and that social climate that we live in. And I know I keep mentioning that, but it's so apparent and so true, and you see that in kids. So I've actually tried to be better in sharing my not deepest and darkest secrets, but just kind of who I am. And this is what you get, and you shouldn't be afraid of being who you are and being open about this type of stuff. You only get one go around. You only get one try at this. So you don't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be what you see on social media. You should just show who you are in the best way you can.
If you were at rookie transition camp, would you tell all the rookies, don't read social media, don't look at it? If you're,
I would
if you're
say-
Trae Young, I mean, Trae Young is,
I would say,
he's already a bust. He hasn't had one game yet.
yeah, I mean, people called Steph Curry a bust. Come on.
Right.
Like, they said he's too small or he's never going to have success, and he's the guy that posts that all the time. I think he's an inspiration. He's super inspiring because look at him now. He's one of the best players of all time,
Right.
and is going to go down as he's going to keep working his way up and through it. So I think that in itself is a great success story, and it's tough to not look at situations like that and find inspiration when you're young and to help you through it.